Cause I damn sure don't want to be a damn sorcerer, cause that's just gonna piss me off, and I don't want to be a warrior either. Bro, I just want to know how many skeletons can you actually summon in game, because like I don't, bro, I gotta look this up.
The skulls and the skins. They ain't nothing. Like, for real. I'm gonna show you what I think. Hold on.
No, I'm trying to see how many skeletons you can summon, because in the older game that was the main problem as to why you couldn't do most missions by yourself. Because a necromancer is supposed to grow his army. Oh, alright, got you. Alright, got you. Let me see if I can, let me see. Oh, and I can stop enemies from moving. Oh my god, bro, I want to do the necromancer class. It's just the druid can transform too. See, the druid has its own pros and cons. But really, it has pros, to be honest, because I can transform into a werewolf or a freaking bear, and then summon people to help me along with that. But I wish it. Oh, hold on. Necromancer class in Diablo 4. Ugh.
Necromancer class in Diablo 4.
I'm just trying to see, like,
Tired of cluttered desks and aching back.
I'm just trying to see how many skeletons I can summon.
Reinvent the wheel. There's still a general of the
Oh yeah, I play Destiny too. I just got downloaded again.
Hulking golems in order to overpower the enemy. This range class will blend summoning with death magic in order to form a really fun playstyle. And as with all of the other classes in Diablo 4, the Necromancer has had a facelift compared to previous iterations. They brought some cool new mechanics to the table to help give this thing a little bit more life. And even if you've been a Necromancer main since day one, there'll still be things for you to kind of learn and master. Now, the beta was an absolute roller coaster for Necromancers. They were incredibly super overpowered in every aspect for the first beta, and then Blizzard pulled a 180, and they made minions unbelievably weak for the second beta. So with that, we really don't know what kind of version of the Necromancer we're going to see on day one, but either way, the class is still really fun to play, and it's one that I enjoyed more than I thought I would. So when it comes to strengths, the Necromancer has great damage options for both single target and AoE, with skills like Bone Spear and Corpse Explosion. They have Blood Orbs, which give Necromancer specific ways to restore life and essence, or these little things that kind of allow you. And then you have good survivability through skills like Blood Mist, which makes you temporarily immune. But as with everything else, there's always weaknesses, and the Necromancer, you're going to have to watch out for a few things. So skills can be incredibly corpse dependent, so if you don't have any bodies lying around, you're going to struggle at times. And there's more management with this class naturally. You have a ton of minions, skills, cooldowns, all of these things you have to manage and keep an eye on, and you have to do this more so with the Necromancer than with other classes. Okay, so let's dive into their class mechanics, and that's going to be the Book of the Dead. So the Book of the Dead allows you to perform deep customization on your minions. You have skeleton warriors, skeleton mages, and you have the golem. Now each summon has one of 3 specializations that you can choose from. So for example, skeleton warriors can be skirmishers, defenders. Skirmishers are these really kind of like high DPS, but sort of like fragile and frail skeletons. They don't have a ton of health, but they're going to deal a ton of damage. Glass cannon types. Then you have defenders. These are the polar opposite, right? They possess very large health bars, but they don't deal much damage. They're more for just soaking damage. And then Reapers have decent health, kind of in between a health bar, but they deal large amounts of damage, but they are very slow. So you're going to get sort of those big sort of haymakers from Reapers versus skirmishers, which are a little bit like quicker to the mark. Now mages, on the other hand, they can shift between damage types, shadow, cold, and bone. So shadow mages are going to deal shadow damage to enemies. Bone will cast bone skills. They're going to deal heavy damage at the cost of their own life. And then you have Cold. Cold is going to chill and freeze enemies. Then you have Golems. Now Golems you can choose between Bone, Blood, and Iron. Bone will taunt enemies in a wide area. Blood will drain the life from nearby enemies. And Iron will slam the ground and stun enemies. And then building on all these decisions you have to make, each minion will also have unique upgrades available to them to change their overall playstyle. So like here's an example of what defenders will have access to. So you have two options to choose from. The first option is every 8 seconds, your skeletal defenders will negate the next instance of direct damage they would take. So basically they skip a damage cycle. Or, the other option you can choose is that you're going to increase the amount of thorns that defender skeletons will inherit from you by 20%. So you go from 30% to 50%. Now, overall, it's a pretty versatile system, right? It's up to you as the Necromancer on how you want to configure your army. What's the way you want to play? Do you want to have a very kind of tanky and defensive-based army? Do you want to have sort of a glass cannon, throw everything at the enemy and try to kill them before they kill you type of play style? It's really up to you, and that's one of the things that makes the Necromancer so fun. But let's say you're not like a zookeeper, like you're not like a minion person. And if that's the case, then you don't have to summon any minions. Instead, you can sacrifice the ability to summon specific units in order to gain a personal permanent buff. Now, this allows you to choose between having none, some, or all of your minions summoned. And this is where you can dive even deeper into customizing how you want your Necro to play and which minions you would rather have at your disposal. If you're someone who doesn't really care much for mages, great. Sacrifice the ability to summon mages, get a permanent buff for yourself, but keep your skeleton warriors around. Now, as someone who's played Necromancer a little bit over the years, right, it's never been like my #1 class or anything like that, this seems really great. And I had a lot of fun in the beta playing the Necromancer. It was something that was a little bit more refreshing. And I felt like they took sort of a stale system of Necromancers in general, and they added a nice twist to make it more engaging through this Book of the Dead mechanic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out throughout the course of launch and Diablo 4's life. So those are minions. What are the actual Necro, right? How do they work? So the Necromancer has 2 resources to fuel their attacks. They have Essence and they have Forces. Now Essence is the primary resource that's used to cast skills. It's going to slowly regenerate over time or through blood orbs. And basic skills can also speed up this process. Now Forces, on the other hand, are defeated enemies who can then be used to summon minions, trigger other skills like Corpse Explosion, Bone Spear. And I want to talk about those skills a little bit next. What type of categories are we looking at for these Necromancer skills? So 1, we have basic skills. These are low damage skills that have 0 cost and are typically used to regenerate a resource, have an effect, CC, do something, but they're not going to be your primary source of damage. Core skills are the sort of bread and butter of what makes the class a class. These are going to consume resources to deal larger amounts of damage, they're going to have AoE effects, stronger effects, and they're going to be a little bit more powerful than basic skills. So Necromancer specific, we have Macabre skills. These are going to deal damage with corpses. These are going to use blood to protect yourself. So you have skills like Blood Mist, which is going to make you temporarily immune. You're going to be able to deal large amounts of damage with skills like Corpse Explosion. Those are all tied to Macabre skills. Then we have Corruption skills. These are going to be curses. So cursing an area will like debust enemies in that target area. This allows you to weaken enemies, make them frail, stun them, do all those kind of things. Summoning skills are going to contain things like Force Tendrils, which is a very strong crowd control skill, and Bone Spirit, which is a high damage AoE skill. Then lastly we have our 2 others. We have our Ultimate skills, which every class has. These are game-changing, very high-impact skills. They possess a long cooldown, and only one of these can be chosen at any point in time. Ultimate skills, which every class has. These are game-changing, very high...
Well, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to beat me. It's gonna be very hard to beat me.
Impact skills, they possess a long cooldown, and only one of these can be chosen at a point in time. Then we have ultimate passives. These are going to be similar to skills, so they're extremely powerful, they're build defining, they can really sort of set the tone of any interactions or set the tone of your build. And like skills, you can only choose one of these things at a time. So guys, overall the Necromancer is a very strong versatile class. It allows players to choose how much management they want in their summoner. If you're somebody who doesn't want to be a zookeeper, don't be a zookeeper. If you're somebody who really loves that aspect of games, go in, be a minion, like manager, do all that fun stuff. Players can exchange those summons for powerful buffs, or like I said, if you prefer that undead army, you can do that as well. I want to hear from you. What do you guys think? Is this the class for you? Are you a zookeeper? Or you just want to supercharge your Necro to be a one-man army? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like Diablo content, please like and subscribe. As always, this has been Vulcan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Intercepted.
Why did the monarchs hate Ashbourne, even though he was also a fellow monarch? In Ashbourne's past, we saw that the monarch of Fangs Rakan and the monarch of White Flames Baran betrayed Ashbourne on the orders of Antares. But why did they even accepted him as a fellow monarch in the first place? Well, if you don't know, Ashbourne was once a ruler who fought alongside the other rulers. However, when the but then he was blessed with the power of darkness by the Absolute Being. But on the other hand, the rulers who were now wielding immense power from the Absolute Being started overpowering the monarchs. This is why they accepted Ashbourne, as his presence helped balancing the power on both sides with his terrifying powers, which is why monarchs started despising him out of jealousy. Why did the monarchs hate Ashbourne, even though he was also a fellow monarch? In Ashbourne's past, we saw that the monarch of Fangs Rakan and the monarch of White Flames Baran betrayed Ashbourne on the orders of Antares. But why did they even accepted him as a fellow monarch?
I'll be right back.
Well, if you don't know, Ashbourne was once a ruler who fought alongside the other rulers. However, when the rulers killed the Absolute Being, he opposed them, and as a result, he got defeated. But then he was blessed with the power of darkness by the Absolute Being. On the other hand, the rulers who were now wielding immense power from the Absolute Being started overpowering the monarchs. This is why they accepted Ashbourne, as his presence helped balancing the power on both sides with his terrifying power.
That's a nice example. Good team defense right there. Snap at the one there. They know to man because to runs. She knows they were trying to find any type of a gap to run.
And range skills that specialize in dealing damage of physical, lightning, and poison. All of these are fueled by spirit, which is generated from basic skills. Now when it comes to strengths, the Druid has a few. They do have decent burst damage, especially when spamming skills like Landslide against stunned enemies, but unfortunately, this isn't always sustainable due to the high spirit cost. They have strong defensive capabilities by becoming unstoppable, healing large amounts of health, and building up Fortify to help protect against damage. So if played correctly, the Druid can truly take a beating. Then they also have damage versatility. The Druid has lots of ways to deal damage in their toolkit. You can summon companions like wolves, vines, and crows. You can shapeshift into a bear or a werewolf, or you can cast nature magic to let the power of nature do damage for you. Now, if you're someone who likes to change things up, the Druid is a decent pick. You'll be able to kind of mix and match these as you see fit. But let's talk about some of the weaknesses the Druid has. So one, they're incredibly setup dependent. The Druid is much more dependent on creating situations in which they can flourish to maximize their potential. Without it, their damage is wildly inconsistent and just not reliable. So for instance, you need to apply Immobilize and Stun to groups of enemies to maximize your landslide damage. This is due to Landslide gaining increased critical chance against immobile or stunned enemies, and other skills kind of follow suit. You need to have a good setup in order to truly take advantage of it. Now, Druids are also super immobile. They are very stagnant. They have two skills they can use for mobility that are Shred and Trample, but again, they are super reliable. Trample has a very long cooldown, and Shred requires a target that you need to leap forward. So as I say for strengths and weaknesses, let's talk about what makes a Druid unique, and that's the Spirit Boom system. So at level 15, you're going to automatically start the quest, Spirits of the Lost Grove, for your fleet. Now once you do, you're going to unlock the Spirit Boom system. And at level 15, you'll also start seeing spirit offerings dropped from slain enemies, and these offerings can be used to then unlock those boons that you just saw. Now these spirit boons themselves are buffs, and they're divided up into 4 categories. First, you have the Deer. This is going to allow you to do things like gain thorns, increase maximum spirit, take less damage from elites, and reduce the duration of crowd control effects. Next, we have Eagle. This is going to increase your crit strike chance, gain maximum life, increase your attack speed, and increase your crit damage. Wolf is going to have a lot of lucky hit type stuff. So first, you'll have a lucky hit that crits have a chance to reset cooldowns of companion skills. The next lucky hit is going to give damage a chance to restore spirit. Then you can fortify for a portion of your max life whenever you use a defensive skill, and you can extend the duration of ultimate skills. For Snake, Snake's pretty interesting. There's quite a bit packed in here. So the first one is every 10th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. Then we have a lucky hit that dealing lightning damage has a chance to cause the target to discharge, dealing damage to surrounding enemies. Critical strikes with shape-shifting skills can heal you, and we have another lucky hit that's going to cause nature magic skills to have a chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate. So as you can see, these boons are incredibly great, and I think it would have been really awesome to get our hands on these during the beta, but we will have to wait till launch to see how they work. Now the Wolf and Snake are much more specific, while the Deer and Eagle are more general, and that might be because they cost less offerings to unlock, but again, that's just a guess. Okay, so let's keep things moving and let's talk about shapeshifting next. So, shapeshifting in Diablo 4 is not a permanent action or something that is under direct control. Instead, you're going to shapeshift depending on the skill that's used. So for instance, if you use the skill Maul, you'll shapeshift into a bear, use the skill, remain in bear form for a few seconds, and then return back to human form. The same goes for any skills that shift you into a werewolf. Now, there are ways you can permanently stay in a form by using legendary effects. We did get confirmation of that from Riker during his in-game playtest recap. But if you're someone who didn't play either of the betas, just knowing that shifting isn't permanent without specific items is something that you might want to know going into it, especially if you're going in thinking, I'm going to be a werewolf all the time as a druid. That just isn't possible without specific items. So next, let's touch on attributes and what these bring to the table for the druid. So one, we have strength. This provides armor at a 1-to-1 ratio per point. So this will help buff your defense. Intelligence is going to provide boosts to resist and resource generation at a rate of 5% and 10% per 100 points respectively. Willpower is going to increase skill damage and healing received by 10% for every 100 points, and overpower damage will be increased by 25% per 100 points. And lastly, we have dexterity. This can increase your dodge chance by 2.5% per 100 points. So out of these, willpower is the main attribute that we want. It increases damage, it gives us increased healing received, and it provides more overpower damage, which is useful since druids have some good overpower synergy. So please keep this in mind as you work towards endgame with the druid. You start unlocking Paragon board tiles, maximize these as much as you can. Now, intelligence is probably the least useful out of all of them. Pretty low in value, but obviously having resist and resource generation is still nice. But comparatively, I would prioritize willpower and strength over intelligence. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about skills. What does the druid use on the battlefield? Your skills are split into 6 different categories. First, you have your basic skills. These are zero-cost skills that regenerate spirit and will typically apply a debuff to the target. So, for example, we have Earth Spike, Wind Shear, Storm Strike, Claw, and Maul. Now, while you'll be able to spam these, they're not your primary damage dealer. Those are going to be your...
Okay, I don't see